No one expected a quiet afternoon to become the moment everything changed. The baby was alone in a familiar home. No crying, no fear, unaware that danger was moving closer by the second. The adults hadn't noticed anything wrong yet, but one presence had. Not a person, no, not a camera, a bobcat, silent, watchful, already stepping into a role no one had given him, the final guardian standing between innocence and harm. Snow came down in slow, quiet flakes over Bozeman, turning the streetlights into soft halos. Inside the Jensen house, the warmth smelled like cedar and laundry soap, the kind of clean comfort that made a long day feel forgivable. Megan Parker set her overnight bag by the entryway, shoulders heavy from a double shift, and reminded herself this was only 15 minutes. She wasn't from here, not really, just a travel nurse passing through, chasing contracts and calmer paychecks. The Jensens were new neighbors, the kind who waved too hard, grateful to be known. Brooke had asked for a tiny favor, voice apologetic, a forgotten medication pouch at the pharmacy. Megan said yes before thinking, because that's what she did. The living room held the calm in its hands like a fragile thing. A small playpen sat near the couch, toys scattered with the sweet messiness of a baby who had recently learned to crawl. Eli Jensen babbled at his own fingers, blonde lashes damp from a nap. Megan watched him for a second, letting the sound loosen the tight spot in her chest that hospitals always left behind. On the far side of the room, Ridge lay near the baby's crib like a shadow with fur. He looked almost like an oversized house cat until you saw the tufted ears, the thicker neck, the wild geometry of his face. He was a foster bobcat, here temporarily, while the rehab center repaired storm damage. Megan had met plenty of strange things on contracts. A bobcat on a rug was new. Brooke had explained Ridge's rules with the careful tone people use around sharp objects. Don't corner him, don't reach fast, let him choose distance. She'd also said he'd been gentle with Eli, quiet, watchful, like he'd adopted the job of guardian without anyone asking. Megan had smiled politely, but still kept her hands close to her sides when she walked past him. Brooke and Tyler left in a hurry, snow crunching under their boots, their goodbye trailing down the hallway. "We'll be right back," Brooke had promised, eyes tired but kind. Megan locked the door after them, more out of habit than fear, then checked the baby monitor on the wall display. Eli was safe. The sensors were green. Everything was normal. Megan poured herself a glass of water, the simple act feeling like luxury. She listened to the furnace breathe, to the soft ticking of a clock she didn't recognize. Eli squealed at a stuffed elk and fell over laughing, then righted himself with stubborn pride. Megan laughed too, quieter than he did, and felt the house settle around them like a blanket. Ridge didn't move, not at first. He kept his body loose, paws tucked, eyes half-lidded in the warmth. Megan told herself that was a good sign, the way calm animals made calm rooms. She crouched beside the playpen, offering Eli a rubber ring, and the baby slapped it against his palm like he was testing the world for strength. Then the air changed, nothing dramatic, just a thin shift, like the room had taken in a breath and forgotten to let it go. Ridge's head lifted 1 inch. His ears rotated slowly, precise as a compass needle. Megan didn't hear anything new, but her skin tightened anyway, responding to the bobcat before her brain could. Eli went quiet, as if someone had turned down his volume. Megan looked toward the hallway, then the back windows, then the laundry room door. Everything looked exactly the same: folded blankets, a clean counter, a baby gate latched. Ridge rose to his feet with a controlled grace that didn't belong to a pet. He stared at the thin crack beneath the laundry room door like it was speaking to him. Megan took a step closer to the playpen, wanting to scoop Eli up and laugh at herself later. Ridge shifted sideways and placed himself between her and the crib, not snarling, not threatening, just setting a boundary with his body. His gaze didn't flicker. His tail went still. Megan stopped mid-step, heart giving a hard, startled beat. Ridge tapped the hardwood once, then again, then a third time. Pause. Two more taps, softer but deliberate. The sound was small, almost polite, yet it landed in Megan's chest like a warning bell. She remembered the rehab volunteer's offhand comment during drop-off. 3 and 2 meant close danger. Megan swallowed, suddenly aware of how loud her own breathing was. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and she flinched so hard she nearly dropped the glass. The screen lit up with a system notification she hadn't asked for. Front door unlocked. Megan stared at it, confused, thumb hovering over the lock icon. The deadbolt hadn't clicked. She hadn't moved. Across the room, Ridge didn't look at the phone. He only held the line. Megan's eyes lifted to the entryway, then to the quiet window beside it, where snow pressed against the glass like frost. Eli made a small, uncertain sound and reached through the playpen slats toward Ridge's fur, as if the bobcat was the only solid thing in the room. Ridge didn't retreat. He stayed close to the baby, ears angled forward, listening through walls. Outside, somewhere beyond the warmth and the thin sheet of glass, the wind brushed the siding with a soft, dragging whisper. Megan forced herself to exhale, slow and quiet, as if noise could invite something closer. She stepped back instead of forward, giving Ridge space, giving Eli silence. In the calm that followed, the house didn't relax. It waited. The house settled back into its winter hush, as if nothing unusual had happened at all. Megan stood where she was, letting the stillness stretch, listening for anything that might explain the alert on her phone. The heater hummed, steady and innocent. Snow whispered against the windows. Everything looked ordinary enough to make her doubt herself. She checked the entryway again, careful not to move too fast. The lock on the front door was still turned, metal cold and firm beneath her fingers. No sound followed, no echo of footsteps, no scrape of boots on the porch. Megan told herself the notification had to be a glitch, one of those harmless errors that came with smart homes and bad reception. In the living room, Eli shifted in the playpen and sucked on his fingers, the way babies did when the world felt slightly off, but not yet frightening. Megan watched his chest rise and fall, counting breaths like she did in hospital rooms. Ridge remained planted near the crib, body angled toward the laundry room, as if guarding a doorway no one else could see. Megan lowered herself slowly onto the rug, keeping her movements small and deliberate. She spoke softly, more for herself than for anyone else. "It's okay, buddy," she murmured, voice barely louder than the furnace. Eli turned his head toward her, eyes wide and trusting, and the sight tightened something deep in her chest. She thought about her last shift, how alarms went off for reasons that weren't always obvious at first. A heart monitor didn't scream because it wanted attention. It screamed because something had changed. Standing there now, Megan felt the same uneasy pull she'd learned never to ignore, no matter how calm the room appeared. Ridge shifted his weight, claws whispering against the hardwood. His ears twitched, adjusting by degrees so fine they looked mechanical. Megan followed his gaze to the laundry room door again. It stood closed, white paint unmarked. A thin shadow pooled beneath it. Nothing moved, nothing announced itself. Her phone vibrated again, softer this time. Megan nearly dropped it. Another alert blinked across the screen. Garage sensor, open, closed. The timestamps were only seconds apart. Megan's mouth went dry. The garage door was attached to the house, separated only by the mudroom and one interior door she hadn't checked yet. She glanced at the hallway leading toward the mudroom, heart picking up speed. In the hospital, this was the moment where she called for backup without apology. Here, she was alone with a baby and an animal everyone insisted was wild. Ridge didn't look wild now. He looked focused, as if the room had narrowed to a single job. Megan rose slowly, palms open, careful not to startle either of them. She took one step toward Eli, then stopped. Ridge moved sideways again, calm but firm, blocking the path with his shoulder. There was no aggression in it, just intent. Megan understood then that he wasn't afraid. He was managing space. Eli made a small sound, half whimper, half question. Ridge answered with a low, barely audible chirp that surprised Megan with its gentleness. The baby quieted, eyes drifting back to the bobcat's face. Megan felt a flicker of awe cut through her fear. Whatever Ridge was sensing, he was trying to keep it from reaching the child. Megan crouched instead, lowering herself to Eli's level without crossing the line Ridge had drawn. She reached into the toy basket with slow care and slid a soft cloth book toward the playpen. Eli grabbed it and chewed the corner, attention momentarily captured. The room breathed again, just a little, but the tension didn't leave. It hung there, thin and watchful. Megan listened harder now, tuning her ears the way Ridge seemed to. She thought she heard something, a faint, distant thud that could have been snow sliding off the roof or something heavier shifting its weight. The uncertainty was worse than a clear sound. She considered calling Brooke, then decided against it. Panic traveled fast, and she didn't want to be wrong. Instead, she sent a quiet text to her neighbor Caleb, the retired K-9 handler Brooke had mentioned once in passing. "Everything okay over there?" she typed, choosing her words with care. Ridge tapped the floor again, softer this time, the rhythm slower. Megan took it as permission to stay where she was. She sat back on her heels, eyes moving between the doors and windows, letting the bobcat set the pace. Outside, the snow kept falling, indifferent and calm, while inside the house held its breath, waiting for the next sign. Megan stayed low, knees aching against the rug, letting the moment stretch instead of rushing it. Years in trauma wards had taught her that speed was a luxury you earned, not a reflex you trusted. She watched Ridge's breathing, the subtle lift of his shoulders, and matched her own to it until the pounding in her ears softened. The text to Caleb sat unread on her screen. She slipped the phone face down beside her, afraid even its glow might pull attention where it didn't belong. Eli gnawed the cloth book, drool dampening the corner, then glanced up as if sensing the shift in the room. His eyes tracked Ridge, not Megan, and that choice unsettled her more than any alarm. Ridge moved again, placing himself closer to the playpen, body angled like a door that could close without warning. He didn't touch the crib, didn't crowd the baby. He simply occupied the space between Eli and the hallway with a calm authority that made Megan hesitate to breathe too loudly. Megan tested a thought aloud, barely shaping the words. "I'm right here," she whispered. The sound felt thin, fragile. Ridge's ears flicked once in acknowledgement, but his eyes never left the laundry room door. It struck her then that he wasn't reacting to a noise. He was waiting for a change. She remembered the rehab volunteer's voice, casual but firm, explaining that bobcats didn't bluff. If they set a boundary, it meant something had already crossed a line humans couldn't see. Megan swallowed and shifted her weight back, increasing the distance between herself and the playpen by a careful inch. The house responded with a sound so faint it might have been imagined, a dull, padded thump from somewhere beyond the mudroom. Not a crash, not a knock, just weight meeting wood. Ridge stiffened, muscles drawing tight beneath his coat, tail dropping low and still. Eli froze, fingers curled in the soft pages of the book. He didn't cry. He didn't laugh. He simply went quiet, eyes wide and searching. Megan felt a surge of protectiveness so sharp it bordered on pain. Every instinct told her to grab him and run, but Ridge didn't move to follow. He moved to block. Ridge tapped the floor again. 3 slow taps, a pause, then 2. This time the sound was louder, more insistent. Megan felt it resonate through her knees and into her chest. Close danger. The phrase repeated in her mind, steady and unwelcome, like a monitor tone she couldn't silence. Her phone buzzed once more. Megan flinched, then forced herself to look. A new notification flashed. Interior door, opened, closed. The timestamp blinked, fresh and undeniable. Her breath caught halfway in. The interior door led from the garage to the mudroom. No one was supposed to be there. Megan's gaze snapped to the hallway. Nothing had changed, and that was the problem. Ridge lowered his head, posture shifting into something older and more deliberate. He wasn't preparing to attack. He was preparing to hold. Megan felt the weight of that choice settle over the room. She slid one hand back, inch by inch, until her fingers brushed the leg of the couch. The solid contact grounded her. She angled her body so she could see Eli, the hallway, and the front door all at once, mimicking Ridge's quiet geometry. The bobcat noticed and adjusted with her. Another sound followed, softer than the last, like fabric brushing lightly against a wall. Megan's heart lurched, so she didn't move. She didn't speak. Ridge didn't tap this time. He stepped forward half a pace, placing himself fully in front of the playpen, and held there. Outside, the wind rose briefly, rattling the eaves, then fell away. Inside, the house stayed tense and listening. Megan pressed her palm flat to the floor, steadying herself, and realized with a cold clarity that whatever was happening was no longer a misunderstanding. The baby was no longer alone, and neither was the danger. Megan kept her eyes on the hallway, but her thoughts ran toward the mudroom like a cold draft. The alert on her phone stared back at her. Interior door opened, closed. She pictured that door swinging inward, just a crack, then sealing again, as if someone tested it and decided to stay quiet. She didn't move toward it, not yet. In the ER, she'd learned the difference between a problem you could fix and a situation you could survive. Right now, survival meant staying small. She shifted her weight closer to the couch, letting it hide part of her body from any angle down the hall. Eli's breathing hitched, then steadied. He clutched the cloth book like a lifeline, cheeks flushed from sudden stillness. Megan watched his tiny throat swallow once. The baby wasn't crying, but he wasn't playing either. He was listening in the only way a baby could, by freezing and waiting for permission to move. Ridge stayed in front of the playpen, shoulders broad, ears forward, eyes locked. The bobcat's fur looked softer in the warm light, but his posture was all purpose. Megan noticed something she hadn't earlier. Ridge wasn't just blocking the hallway, he was blocking her line of sight, as if he didn't want her distracted by what she couldn't handle. Her phone vibrated again, and she flinched, then forced herself to glance. Front door, unlocked. Megan's stomach turned. She hadn't touched the lock. The lock hadn't clicked. She stared at the entryway from across the room, as if the deadbolt might start speaking. Ridge didn't look there. He kept his attention on the inside threat. Megan's fingers hovered over the lock app, the impulse to slam everything shut with one tap. But a single wrong sound, an electronic chime, a motor whir could announce her position. She lowered the phone instead and listened for the most dangerous thing in any house, a deliberate quiet that wasn't meant to be quiet. A faint shift came from the mudroom, too soft to be a door, too heavy to be wind. Ridge's whiskers pulled forward, his jaw tensed. Megan felt the urge to stand, to do something, anything, but Ridge tapped the floor once, sharp and final, like a nurse's hand on a patient's shoulder. Stay. Eli made a small, reedy whine. Megan leaned in just enough to meet his eyes, then lifted her index finger to her lips without thinking. It wasn't a shush meant to scold. It was a plea. Eli blinked, confused, then pressed his mouth to the edge of the book again, sucking on fabric as if it could taste like safety. Megan's phone lit up with a message. Caleb, just 2 words. I'm here. Relief and fear collided so fast she nearly cried. She didn't answer. She couldn't risk the buzz of typing. Instead, she angled her body so she could see the front window's reflection, watching for movement without looking straight at it. Ridge turned his head a fraction toward Megan, eyes catching hers for the first time. The look wasn't soft, it was clear, a warning with no room for debate. Megan understood then that Ridge wasn't asking for trust, he was demanding it. She nodded once, barely, like agreeing to a hard plan in a crisis. From somewhere near the laundry room, a thin metallic sound whispered again, like a tool grazing a surface. Megan's throat tightened. She pictured hands she couldn't see, patient and careful, trying not to make a mess. Ridge lowered his body closer to the floor, ready without being reckless, guarding the baby the way a shield guards a heart. Outside, headlights swept briefly across the snow as a car passed down the street, then faded. The house did not relax. Megan's pulse hammered against her ribs, but she kept her breathing slow, counting in 4s the way she taught anxious patients. In, hold, out, hold. The rhythm kept her from shaking apart. Eli shifted his knees, trying to stand, and Ridge slid closer without touching him, blocking the playpen's opening with his own presence. Megan saw then how carefully the bobcat controlled space. No panic, no drama, just quiet strategy. It made her believe the danger was real, in a way no alert ever could. Caleb's silhouette appeared in the edge of the front window, barely there, staying low, moving like someone trained not to be seen. Megan's chest loosened for one brief second. Then Ridge's ears snapped toward the mudroom again, sharper than before. Whatever had opened the interior door wasn't gone. It was simply closer. Megan felt the room tilt, not physically, but in the way priorities rearranged themselves when a situation crossed an invisible line. Caleb's presence outside helped, but it didn't solve the problem pressing inward from the hall. Whatever Ridge sensed hadn't left. It had only learned where the limits were. The bobcat shifted his stance, sliding one paw back, then settling again, a controlled adjustment meant to keep balance. Megan noticed how he positioned himself so Eli stayed within his shadow. The message was unmistakable. The baby was the center of everything now. Nothing mattered more than that small, quiet space. Another sound came from the mudroom, closer this time, a faint scrape, followed by a pause that felt intentional. Megan's stomach clenched. In hospitals, she'd learned to read pauses. They often meant someone was listening, gauging reactions, deciding what to do next. Her phone vibrated once, sharp enough to make her flinch. A message from Caleb appeared without sound. Someone's testing doors. Don't move. Megan closed her eyes for half a second, absorbing it. When she opened them, Ridge was already lowering himself further, muscles coiled, attention narrowed to a single point. Eli shifted, pushing himself upright against the playpen rails. The movement was innocent, curious, but Ridge reacted instantly, stepping closer, blocking the opening with his shoulder. Megan held her breath, terrified a cry would break loose. Instead, Eli froze, as if he understood the stakes without knowing why. Megan slid her hand toward the floor lamp beside the couch, stopping just short of touching it. Light could reveal her position as easily as it could scare someone off. She withdrew her hand, choosing darkness and stillness over action. The choice felt wrong and right at the same time. The scrape came again, followed by a soft click that made Megan's heart stutter. Not loud enough to be careless, not quiet enough to be imagined. Ridge's ears flattened for the first time, his tail stiffening. He didn't growl. He didn't tap. He simply held his ground. Megan thought of every parent she'd watched hover helplessly outside an ICU room. She knew that feeling now, the terror of being present but unable to intervene. Her instincts screamed to grab Eli, but Ridge's calm refusal told her that movement was the risk, not the solution. From outside, Caleb's shadow shifted slightly in the window's reflection, then stilled again. He was waiting for a sign, just like she was. Megan realized how strange it was to trust a wild animal more than her own judgment, and how natural it felt at the same time. Ridge let out a low, breathy sound, barely audible, not a threat but a reminder. Eli responded by leaning back against the playpen wall, small fingers curling into the mesh. The baby's quiet cooperation sent a sharp ache through Megan's chest, which he was adapting. He was learning fear. The house creaked softly, settling under its own weight, and for a moment Megan wondered if that was all it had been, wood and winter and coincidence. Then the interior door handle turned, just enough to test resistance, then stilled. Megan's vision tunneled. This was no accident. Ridge stepped forward one deliberate pace, placing himself squarely between the playpen and the hallway. His body became a wall, solid and unmoving. Megan pressed her palm flat to the floor again, grounding herself in the present. Whatever happened next, she knew one thing with terrifying clarity. The baby was no longer alone, and the bobcat had already chosen his side. The porch camera clicked on with a faint mechanical whisper, a sound so small it felt louder than a shout. Megan didn't look at the screen right away. She watched Ridge instead, the way his ears sharpened and his spine lifted as if a line had been drawn through the room and pulled tight. When she finally let her eyes drift to the wall display, a figure stood at the edge of the frame. A man in a dark knit cap, shoulders hunched against the cold, positioned where the porch light flared just enough to blur his face. He wasn't knocking. He wasn't moving. He was watching. Megan's breath caught halfway in. In all her years as a nurse, she had learned the difference between someone who needed help and someone who didn't want to be seen. This man was the second kind. He stood with the patience of someone waiting for a mistake. Ridge reacted without sound. He stepped toward the window and struck the glass once with the flat of his paw, firm, controlled, deliberate. The glass shivered but held. Then, just as quickly, he turned away and returned to the playpen, reclaiming his place between Eli and the hallway. The message was clear enough to make Megan's skin prickle. The warning wasn't for the man outside, it was for her. Don't draw attention. Don't escalate. Protect the center. Eli shifted at the sound, then settled again, eyes tracking Ridge with quiet trust. Outside, the man tilted his head slightly, as if listening through the glass. He didn't flinch. He didn't step back. His stillness was unsettling, practiced. Megan's mind raced through possibilities she didn't want to name, each one worse than the last. Her phone buzzed silently against the rug. Caleb's name flashed, followed by a single line. He's at the porch. Don't let him see you. Megan slid the phone beneath her thigh, anchoring it there. She kept her face turned away from the window, using the screen's reflection instead. Ridge lowered his body again, weight shifting to his hind legs, not in preparation to attack, but to absorb. He was measuring distance, angle, sound. Megan realized he was tracking more than one thing at once, the man outside and the softer, closer danger within the house. The porch figure lifted one gloved hand and rested it against the glass, not pounding, not testing, just touching, as if claiming the surface. Megan's stomach lurched. She felt the urge to scream, to shatter the quiet, but she held it down, letting the bobcat's calm dictate her own. Eli whimpered, a thin sound that cut through the room. Ridge answered with a gentle chirr, almost tender, and the baby quieted, cheek pressed to the rail. Megan's eyes burned. She had never seen fear handled with such care. The man's hand slid down the window, slow and deliberate, leaving a faint streak of condensation. Then he stepped back into the shadow, disappearing from the frame without hurry. The porch light glowed on empty snow. Megan didn't relax, neither did Ridge. The camera stayed on, humming softly, as if unsure whether to stand down. Ridge's gaze shifted from the window back to the hallway, sharper than before. Megan understood then that the man outside had only been one part of the problem. The more dangerous question was where he would go next. She pressed her lips together, tasting metal, and stayed exactly where she was. The house, the baby, the bobcat, all of it balanced on a narrow edge. Outside, the snow kept falling. Inside, the silence deepened, waiting for the next move. Megan didn't dare move, even as the porch camera feed dimmed back to stand by. The man's disappearance felt wrong, like a held breath rather than an ending. She kept her body angled so she could see the hallway without exposing herself to the windows, trusting reflections and shadows more than direct sight. Her phone warmed under her thigh. She slid it out just enough to read without lighting her face. A new message from Caleb appeared, short and steady. He moved. I'm staying low. Megan's chest loosened for a second, then tightened again. If he'd moved, he hadn't gone far. Ridge shifted his weight and tapped the floor twice, then paused. The sound was quieter now, more precise. Megan felt the meaning settle in her bones without words. Stay put. Don't chase answers. She nodded once, a reflexive agreement, as if Ridge were a colleague calling the shots. Eli stirred, knees pressing into the mesh, a soft fuss building in his throat. Megan leaned closer without crossing the line, whispering his name like a promise. Ridge stepped nearer to the playpen, shoulder blocking the opening, his presence a gentle refusal. The baby quieted, cheek resting against the rail. Megan thought about calling Brooke again and stopped herself. Panic traveled faster than facts, and she needed calm on her side. Instead, she typed a single message to Caleb and erased it twice before sending. Inside, alerts tripped. Interior door. The words felt thin, but they were enough. A faint sound brushed the house, fabric against siding maybe, or a careful foot adjusting on the porch edge. Megan's pulse ticked up. Ridge's ears snapped toward the side of the house, then toward the hallway again, triangulating something Megan still couldn't hear. He wasn't guessing. He was tracking. She remembered a night shift when a patient's monitor stayed flat until it didn't, and the change came all at once. That memory sharpened her focus. This was the quiet before motion. She pressed her palms to the rug, grounding herself, keeping her breathing slow and shallow. Caleb's silhouette appeared briefly in the reflection of the front window, then vanished as he repositioned. Megan admired the discipline it took us not to rush in. Ridge tapped again, 3 slow taps, paused 2, louder than before. The rhythm carried urgency now, a directive she couldn't ignore. Megan slid backward, inch by inch, guiding herself and the baby into the corner where the camera coverage thinned. She moved like she was underwater, careful not to disturb the air. Ridge mirrored her adjustment, never turning his back on the hallway, always keeping Eli behind him. The house responded with another soft click from the mudroom, closer than before. Megan's stomach dropped. This wasn't someone leaving. It was someone mapping the inside. Ridge lowered his body further, ready without being reckless, a living barricade with patience carved into muscle. Eli reached through the mesh and brushed Ridge's fur with trembling fingers. The Bobcat didn't flinch. He let the contact happen, anchoring the baby with stillness. Megan's eyes stung. She'd seen courage in crowded rooms and bright lights. This was quieter, and it felt stronger. Caleb's message came through again, a single line that landed like a weight. Calling it in, stay hidden. Megan tucked the phone away and stayed exactly where Ridge had placed her. The call that couldn't be made by her was being made by someone else. For now, that had to be enough. The house seemed to listen harder once the call went out, as if it knew the rules had changed. Megan felt the shift in her own body too, the moment when uncertainty narrowed into focus. Help was coming, but not yet, and everything between now and then mattered more than anything she'd ever done on a shift. Ridge moved first, not forward, not back, sideways. He repositioned with careful geometry, placing his body where it could block the hallway and still shadow the playpen. Megan understood the choice instantly. Whatever was happening wasn't random. It was testing angles, lines of sight, reaction time. A faint scrape brushed the siding again, closer to the side yard this time. Megan followed the sound in her mind, tracing the outside of the house like a map. Porch, side wall, mudroom. The pattern made her uneasy. This wasn't someone lost in the cold. This was someone learning the house. Her phone vibrated softly, muted by her palm. Caleb's message appeared in gray text. He's circling, checking responses. Megan closed her eyes for a heartbeat, letting the words settle. Circling meant patience. It meant intent. It meant the danger wasn't passing through. It was choosing. Ridge's ears pivoted in sharp increments, tracking movement Megan still couldn't hear. He didn't growl. He didn't strike. He watched, measured, waited. Megan realized then that he wasn't reacting to noise at all. He was reacting to rhythm, the pauses between sounds, the deliberate timing. Eli shifted behind him, a soft, breathy sound escaping his lips. Megan felt the familiar pull to soothe, to fix, to intervene. She resisted it, trusting Ridge's quiet authority. The Bobcat tapped once, just once, then stilled. The signal felt different, not warning, confirmation. The porch camera flickered on again. Megan glanced at the screen and saw the man at the edge of the frame, closer now, posture angled toward the side yard. In his gloved hand was something pale and rectangular, tucked quickly into his coat when the camera brightened. He wasn't surprised. He was annoyed. Megan's chest tightened. She'd seen that look before in patients who thought they had more time. The man stepped out of view, not retreating, just relocating. The camera stayed lit for a second longer, then dimmed. Ridge didn't look back at it. He followed the unseen movement instead. From the mudroom came a soft, deliberate test of the handle, one careful turn, then release. No rattle, no force. Megan's vision tunneled. This wasn't someone trying to get in fast. It was someone checking how easy it would be when the moment came. Ridge shifted his weight again, lowering his center of gravity. His tail went still as wire. Megan felt a strange, fierce gratitude rise in her throat. Whatever fear she carried, he was carrying more and holding it away from the baby with nothing but instinct and restraint. Outside, a car passed on the street, tires hissing on snow. The normal sound felt obscene against the quiet terror inside the house. Megan pressed her forehead briefly to the couch cushion, grounding herself, then lifted her head again. She could not disappear. She could only endure. Caleb's voice carried faintly through the wall, low and controlled, speaking to someone she couldn't hear. Megan didn't need to know the words to feel their weight. The situation had been named now. It had entered the world beyond this room. Ridge tapped twice, then paused. Megan stayed exactly where she was, his eyes on the Bobcat, heart beating slow and hard. The man outside was learning. The Bobcat was countering. And somewhere between them, time stretched thin, waiting to see who would move first. The first siren didn't sound like relief. It sounded like a clock starting to run. Megan heard it distantly, folded into the wind, and felt the man outside react before she did. Ridge's head snapped toward the street, then back to the hallway, recalibrating priorities with unnerving precision. The porch camera flared on again. The man was closer now, standing where the lens struggled to hold him. He wasn't hiding anymore. He looked up once as if acknowledging the siren, then shifted his weight and moved with purpose toward the side door. Megan's pulse hammered. Ridge tapped the floor, 3, pause, 2, hard enough to carry across the room. Megan didn't hesitate. She slid lower, pulling the couch's bulk between herself and the hallway, keeping Eli tucked behind Ridge's flank. Her hands shook, but her movements stayed small and deliberate. The side door handle turned again, firmer this time. A muted clack followed, metal against metal. The sound made Megan's teeth chatter. Ridge stepped forward one pace, claws whispering against hardwood, and planted himself squarely in the line of entry. He didn't growl, he waited. Eli made a thin, frightened sound. Ridge answered with a soft chirr, close and steady, and the baby quieted, breath hitching once before settling. Megan felt tears threaten and swallowed them down. There was no room for anything that would steal focus now. Outside, the siren grew louder, then split into two. Blue and red bled across the snow through the window's edge. The man paused. Megan saw it in the camera feed. The smallest hesitation was a calculation. He pressed his palm to the door, testing, listening. Ridge surged forward just enough to meet the door with his weight. Not a strike, a statement. The wood creaked in protest. Megan felt it through the floor, a vibration that carried resolve. The handle stilled. For a breathless moment, nothing moved. Then the man shifted again, retreating from the side door and cutting across the yard toward the back. The camera struggled to follow. Ridge pivoted, tracking through walls and angles Megan couldn't see, his body a compass needle locked on danger. Caleb's voice rose outside, clearer now, urgent but controlled. Megan caught fragments through the glass, commands, directions, the cadence of authority. Ridge didn't relax. He repositioned again, keeping Eli shielded, ready for a last, desperate move. The back door shuddered once, a heavy test that rattled the frame. Megan gasped despite herself. Ridge answered with a low, resonant growl that filled the room and seemed to push the air outward. It wasn't rage, it was refusal. The sirens closed in, brakes, crunching on snow. Voices multiplied, firm and loud. The pressure at the door eased, then vanished. Megan stayed still, counting breaths, unwilling to believe it yet. Ridge held his ground, eyes bright, body taut. Only when boots thundered past the window and a voice called clear instructions did Ridge ease a fraction. Not rest, never rest, but readiness reshaped. Megan pressed her face to Eli's hair, whispering nothing at all, and waited for the world to catch up. The front door burst open with controlled urgency, not chaos, boots stamping snow into the entryway, voices cutting through the house with practiced clarity. Megan flinched despite herself. Ridge didn't. He held his line, eyes tracking every movement until the unfamiliar shapes resolved into uniforms and purpose. "Ma'am, stay where you are," someone said gently, palms open, posture low. Megan nodded without trusting her voice. She felt Eli's heartbeat against her chest, fast but steady, and focused on that rhythm while the room filled with light and authority. Through the window, she caught a glimpse of the yard, flashlights slicing through drifting snow, officers spreading out with methodical intent. A figure stumbled near the back fence, then froze. The sirens cut off abruptly, replaced by shouted commands and the crunch of boots closing distance. Ridge moved then, not toward the officers, but toward the open doorway, placing himself between Megan and the outside world. It wasn't fear that guided him, it was completion. His job inside wasn't done until danger was unmistakably contained. Megan watched as two officers paused, instinctively giving him space. One of them murmured something under his breath, a note of awe she'd heard before when people recognized something extraordinary unfolding in front of them. Ridge met their eyes briefly, then looked back to Eli. Outside, a voice broke. Panicked, protesting, quickly overridden by firm restraint. Metal clicked, so someone said, hand secured. Megan's knees weakened, and she sank against the couch, finally letting her weight go. Relief came in waves, dizzying and unreal. Ridge exhaled a long, controlled breath and eased back toward the playpen. He lowered his head until it brushed Eli's fingers, accepting the baby's clumsy grip without moving away. The contact felt ceremonial, like a promise honored. An officer approached slowly, asking Megan if she was hurt. She shook her head, then realized she was crying, not loudly, just enough to blur the edges of the room. He protected him, she said, her voice barely steady. The officer followed her gaze and nodded once. From the doorway, Caleb appeared, face pale, eyes locked on Eli and Ridge. He didn't rush in. He waited for Megan's nod before crossing the threshold, kneeling beside her with a hand on the floor, like he needed the ground too. Outside, the noise receded, radios crackling, doors shutting, engines idling. Inside, the house felt altered, as if it had survived a storm and didn't quite recognize itself yet. Ridge remained alert, but the sharp edge had softened into vigilance. Megan pressed her cheek to Eli's hair, breathing him in, anchoring herself to now. The baby wasn't alone. He hadn't been for a long time. And as Ridge settled beside them, watchful and unyielding, Megan understood that some guardians didn't need permission to choose. The house filled with quieter sounds now, the shuffle of boots becoming paperwork, radios lowering their voices, the soft clink of metal somewhere outside. Megan stayed where she was, arms wrapped around Eli, letting the world slow to a pace she could finally breathe within. An officer knelt a few feet away, careful not to crowd Ridge. He spoke gently, asking questions that Megan answered in fragments. Time felt strange, elastic. She caught herself watching Ridge more than anyone else, noting how his gaze never drifted far from the baby. Outside, a voice carried through the open doorway, calm, procedural, final. Suspect in custody. The words landed softly, like a blanket laid over a shaking body. Megan closed her eyes for a second and let the tension drain from her shoulders. Ridge shifted then, not retreating but repositioning, as if acknowledging a boundary had moved. He angled himself beside the playpen, one flank toward the door, one toward Eli. The posture was different now, less combative, more custodial. Megan felt a quiet awe settle in her chest. Caleb exhaled a long breath he seemed to have been holding for an hour. He reached for Megan's hand, squeezing once, steady and present. "You did everything right," he said softly. She shook her head. The words felt too simple for what had happened. An older officer approached, eyes thoughtful, voice low. He glanced at Ridge, then back to Megan. "That animal read the situation before any of us," he said. "Before cameras, before calls. That doesn't happen often." He let the sentence hang with respect. Eli stirred and reached again for fur, fingers curling with the certainty of habit. Ridge responded with a gentle nudge, barely touching enough to reassure. Megan felt tears rise again, different now, warm, grateful, heavy with meaning she couldn't name. The officer asked if they could review the camera footage. Megan nodded, numb, watching the screen replay moments she'd lived without seeing. Ridge's early movements, the placements, the pauses, patterns revealed themselves with clarity that made her stomach flip. Caleb watched too, jaw set, eyes shining. He was communicating, he said quietly. No one disagreed. The room seemed to accept it as fact, not theory. Something older than training had been at work here. As the officers prepared to leave, the house regained its edges. Lights dimmed, doors closed. The night returned, calmer but changed. Megan felt the weight of it settle gently, like aftercare following trauma she hadn't yet processed. Ridge lay down at last, close enough that Eli's foot brushed his shoulder. His eyes remained half open, vigilant without strain. Megan leaned back, exhausted and whole at once, understanding that safety had many forms, and some of them chose you without being asked. Morning arrived without ceremony, pale light filtering through the curtains as if unsure it was welcome. Megan woke on the couch, stiff and disoriented, Eli warm and heavy against her chest. For one suspended moment, she didn't remember why her body ached or why the house felt different. Then she saw Ridge. He lay on the rug beside the playpen, exactly where he had been hours before, eyes half open, breathing slow and even. Snowmelt clung to the edges of the doorframe, footprints frozen into memory. The night returned to her in fragments, and with it, a quiet, overwhelming gratitude. Caleb moved softly in the kitchen, the clink of a mug grounding the space. He didn't speak at first. None of them needed words yet. Megan adjusted Eli gently, careful not to disturb the fragile calm that had settled over the room like fresh linen. Ridge rose when Eli stirred, not abruptly, just enough to close the distance. The baby reached out instinctively, fingers brushing fur with familiarity that made Megan's throat tighten. Ridge answered with a low, reassuring breath, a sound meant only for those who listened closely. Later, when Brooke arrived, eyes red and hands shaking, she dropped to her knees beside the playpen without hesitation. She didn't ask questions. She didn't rush to hold her child. She reached for Ridge instead, resting her hand on his back in silent understanding. The footage would circulate, the story would spread, and strangers would assign names to what they had witnessed: hero, miracle, instinct. Megan knew better. What she had seen wasn't spectacle. It was choice, made quietly and held to without wavering. As the house settled back into routine, something fundamental remained altered. Doors were locked more carefully, glances lingered longer, and Ridge stayed close, always close, a constant presence shaped by a night that had asked everything of him. In the afternoon light, Megan prepared to leave, pausing at the threshold. She looked back once more at Eli safe in his world of soft edges and watchful silence. Ridge met her gaze, steady and unblinking, as if acknowledging a shared truth. The baby had been alone only in appearance. Protection had arrived long before fear found a voice. And as Megan stepped out into the quiet street, she understood that some guardians don't wait for danger to announce itself. They listen, they choose, and they never step aside. Before you leave, take just one quiet second with this story. If what you witnessed tonight touched you, even a little, leave one simple word in the comments. You can write honor for a protector who chose courage, or love for a bond that needed no words. That single word tells me you were here, that this story mattered to you. And if you believe there are still moments of goodness, loyalty, and unexpected guardianship left in this world, I invite you to subscribe and stay with this channel. More true feeling stories are waiting, stories about quiet heroes, unseen courage, and the moments that remind us we're not as alone as we think. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening with your heart. And I'll see you in the next story.